Is our Wisconsin trailblazer, Leah Vukmir. Leah is a registered nurse and took her passion to helping others in the state government. Before becoming a state senator, she was a constituent of our father's and likes to joke now that she used to be his constituent and now she is our dad's senator. So please give a warm welcome to Senator Leah Vukmir.
To be here this afternoon to show my support for my good friend, Scott Walker. Matt and Alex, you never cease to amaze me. I've watched you grow into the fine young men you are today. But I've also had the privilege of watching your father grow into the great leader he is today. You know, it seems like just yesterday that a very young Scott Walker, very young, knocked on my door during his special election run to the state assembly. At the time, I was a young mom just dipping my toes into the political arena, concerned about education issues, knocking on the door at my school board. I was immediately energized by this election that was taking place in our hometown of Waukesha. With a crowded field of primary opponents, I was eager to get into the fray. And I found myself campaigning for one of Scott's opponents. That's when I learned my first lesson in politics. Never commit to a candidate until you have thoroughly vetted the entire field. So on that very warm Wisconsin Avenue, I invited Scott into my foyer, and I did proceed to grill him for about 20 minutes about education policy and a wide array of issues that was facing our state at the time. I was so impressed with his grasp of the issues, but also his clear commitment to conservative principles. As he walked out of my door, down my sidewalk, and over to my neighbor's house, I realized I was supporting the wrong candidate. I distinctly remember saying to myself, this kid is going places. This kid is going to win. And boy, history has shown that Scott Walker has won, and he is going places. Next stop, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. To all the people from Iowa to New Hampshire, South Carolina to Nevada, I offer my first encounter with Scott Walker as a cautionary tale. You may think you have chosen the right candidate for 2016, but you owe it to yourself, no, you owe it to your children and your grandchildren to take a hard look at Scott Walker, because you don't want to make a similar mistake that I did. In 2002, we all know Scott became our Milwaukee County executive, where he continued to enact conservative reforms. I then ran for his seat in the state assembly, and it was through the eyes of his legislative colleagues that I had a very unique view into his character, his leadership, his strong command of policy, and his unmatched work ethic. As you can imagine, it was quite a legacy to live up to. In 2010, when Scott ran for governor, I decided to run for the state senate. We both faced an uphill battle, but the economic climate in Wisconsin was so bad that the people knew our state needed to change course. Scott ran an incredibly organized and aggressive campaign, beating back the hard-hitting special interest. In hindsight, those union attacks, they seemed pretty mild compared to what we would face just a few short months later. Scott's win and the majorities that his coattails did create in the state legislature were pretty remarkable. But you know, Scott wasn't one to sit back on his laurels. He got to work right away. His predecessor left him with a $3.6 billion deficit, and he had work to do. We had work to do. I will never forget the day that Governor Walker stepped into our Senate caucus. He wanted to brief us on his plan for solving our budget problem. With a steely calm, he outlined his plan for collective bargaining reform, and he asked us to join him in a bold effort that caught the eye of the nation. Well, all of you in this room know that the rest is history. To my many colleagues who are present here today, we won't soon forget the fight. Alongside Governor Walker, Tonette Walker, Lieutenant Governor Clayfish, we faced the unhinged wrath from the forces supporting the status quo. We stood with Governor Walker in the face of death threats, protests, recalls, and unprecedented vile behavior that lasted for months on end. Through it all, Governor Walker never wavered. His resolve set an example for all in the legislature. We prevailed and set our state on the right course. We set an example, and Wisconsin became a beacon of hope for reform. You know, looking back on Scott's time as governor, what do I see? I see bold ideas. I see conviction. I see courage under fire. I see servant leadership. And I see adherence to the principles of limited government, freedom, free markets, and federalism. That is Scott Walker's legacy in Wisconsin. And I, for one, think it is time for us to share Scott Walker with the rest of America. America needs what we have here in Wisconsin. America needs a leader like Scott Walker. America needs a leader who will stand up to special interests, a leader who will defend our borders, a leader who will cherish our founding principles, and a leader who will put the taxpayers first. Scott Walker can be that leader. God bless and keep the faith.